Good evening, ladies, and to our listening audience, welcome. And we are actually celebrating the amazing, the dynamic Queen Diamond, as Barbara always says, Miss Juanita B. Johnson. Juanita, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How's everybody this evening?
We're good. Well, I am LaWanna Bradford, visionary and co-founder of Celebrate You, with my awesome co-founder, Barbara Beckley. And we're so excited because one of the things that we've been doing on the page this month is, instead of going back and doing all of the typical historical accounts, and it's not minimizing the great giants whose shoulders we stand on, but we wanted to do something different. We wanted to really focus and celebrate our living history, things that are happening in and around us every single day. Many of the individuals are unsung. And so we looked around, and Juanita is one of those giants who we are celebrating. She is an example of living Black history. And I'm just so excited that she took the time and opportunity to be here on the show tonight. It's an honor and a privilege to have someone who not only is a living legacy of African-American history, but also is a student and a voice for African-American history. So again, welcome, Juanita, and welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening.
Thank you so very much.
Well, this is going to be just very conversational, and you see this funky kind of backdrop that we have here. I was trying to create a quilt, kind of giving that format, because we know that the quilting was very much a part of our history, and just symbolically what piecing the quilts would mean. So I'm going to turn that over to you a little bit, and then we're going to segue into an amazing accomplishment that you did. So can you just share a little bit about what quilts mean within the African-American community, Juanita?
Well, I definitely can. At least I know what it means in my family and in my life. Quilts are beautiful pieces of heritage that are passed down, that have practical applications that keep you warm, but they mean so very much in terms of how they were constructed, how they took a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and were patched together with love, many times with limited supplies. But when it's all together, when all the quilt pieces are put together, you have this beautiful tapestry of something that's unique. I've never seen two quilts that are just alike, which is, to me, reflects how we are as people. None of us, we may be similar, but we are all unique and beautiful, and together we make something just outstanding and one of a kind. And in the African-American community, quilts did not start off as beautiful pieces of art. They started off from a position of practicality that took on beauty as time went on. We weren't given the opportunity to have the best fabric, to have the best designs. They were all created individually and uniquely from a scrap of this, a piece of this, a memory of this. And sometimes in the quilts, there were codes. There were family codes. There may have been community codes. And so, like many things that we have shaped in the African-American community, we took something that was considered discarded, useless, of limited value, and turned it into something very beautiful. That is, to me, it's not just also a piece of furnishing or a family item to provide warmth and security and a sense of belonging. It also speaks of how we've taken what America has given us, which is very little and many times, and weaved such beautiful lives of hope, of courage, of determination, of audacity. And so to me, a quote symbol is not only a practical application of fabric and use of creativity, the artistic side of a quilt, but also just how you can take something that really was discarded, others who literally owned the fabric didn't want it anymore, and turn it into something very beautiful, unique, one of a kind, and everlasting. Because I know in some families, quilts have been passed down for at least the last 75 years, and I'm sure those families that really preserve the quilts probably have quilts that that could be even between 120 and 170 years old. And that's saying a lot for something that was considered scrap or not valuable to have lasted that long. And many times America has seen Black people as scrap or not valuable, or something that doesn't last, something that could be replaced. If one of us were to die, well, give me another one. So I see a lot of metaphors within the framework of a quilt.
I love that. Barbara, I'm going to turn it over to you to respond, and then I'm going to get into the meaning of Sankofa griot. So Barbara.
Well, I'm loving that you talked about the quilt, because when I was listening to you, I was just thinking about, because I always put pictures in my head when I hear people talk, and I make a movie in my head. So I'm just thinking about how all the way back, like maybe 1800s, how, the women, and they got together, they put the quilt together, they found the parts. Like you said, it wasn't that the quality of it, but they knew that it was going to mean something. So even way back then, they knew that they had to bring this legacy on. So I'm loving that, the quilt represents that for, the Black history, for families. So that's incredible. That's awesome.
And I love what you said about the hidden codes that were sometimes woven or sewn in the fabric, and then that takes us to after you define what it means for those that aren't familiar with the term Sankofa and griot, that will take us into and again, kudos and congratulations to you for your book, The Audacity Code, Coloring Black Outside the Lines.
Coloring Black Outside
the Lines. And so let's first start with the word Sankofa and then griot.
Sankofa is a West African term, which means to go forward by looking backwards, to take the wisdom from the past and apply it to the present and the future. The word griot is, again, a West African word, which means a storyteller. It's a position that's very honored, and because of the way that West African, our ancestors were treated, we were not taught to read and write, and so any sense of cultural continuity was passed down orally. So the griot was and still is a very, very, very large part of the African American experience. I have people laugh sometimes, but it's very true. There was a time early in my career when I worked for a large media organization, and if I really wanted to have an impact as it related to what my goals and responsibilities were as a marketing manager, I knew that I needed to do door-to-door canvassing as opposed to sending out mailers or doing commercials on television. African Americans tend to be an oral people still. And so the position of being the storyteller, of passing down the secret DNA of survival, of living, of thriving when everything is thrown against you, to limit your sense of humanity, your sense of uniqueness, your sense of spirituality, your oneness with the Creator, then the griot then and now continues to be an important position in the community for transfer of culture.
I love that, and I think that's beautiful when you're saying that, Sankofa, it's like in order to go forward, we're looking back, we're learning those lessons from our past and taking that and building a better tomorrow. So being able to celebrate the now and then build based upon that history, based upon that experience, a better tomorrow for the next generation. And like you said, we're an oral people and telling the stories. And I think about with my father and my grandfather, that they would just, we would love to just be around them. It's like, tell us a story. And, as a kid, you're just so excited and you're thinking, oh, they're being so colorful, but realizing, no, that was real life they were telling.
Right.
It wasn't fiction added to it. It's like, no, this is really what happened.
Really life. Right. They survived some amazing times.
Yes, they did. And speaking of which, so what I love about your book, and again, kudos to you, and it's one of the reasons we're celebrating you as living in American history, is having the courage to tell your story, and to tell your story in a way that weaves or sews the tapestry comprised of all of these different stories into this beautiful quilt work called the Audacity Code. And the Audacity Code, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, but the only thing that I want to say is often when we hear the word audacious, people think, as you mentioned, in a negative terminology, a negative connotation. But when you really look at, there's multiple definitions of it, but when you look at the applied definition as it relates to African American history, I'd like you to explain to our listening audience, what do you mean when you say audacious?
Thank you, LaWanna. What I mean is the audacity of the inner will to take nothing and make something, to go from an enslaved people to the highest office of the land, President and currently now Vice President of the United States of America. This audacity to overcome everything that was thrown in front of African Americans, legal segregation, economic slavery called sharecropping, the less than stellar healthcare, if any healthcare at all, or healthcare that uses as guinea pigs. There are so many things that African Americans have positively been audacious about to overcome any obstacles in our way. We've had to push up, press up, stand up, be counted for those things that are positive about audacity, the positivity of desire, vision, accountability, trustworthiness. Everything that is negative has always been applied, or it appears to have been applied against the African American. But despite it all, we still remain a very loving people, a very accepting people, a people who continue to have hope, because without hope, you really don't have a future. And so the audacity, to me, the Audacity Code is, despite everything that was thrown at the Black population, there are those who had phenomenal success, but even if a person didn't have phenomenal success when they made it to the newspaper or to the latest news broadcast, they were able to put together families. Even when your family members may have been wrong simply because of the color of their skin, we still, even in those tragedies, we banded together, we press forward, and we hope for a better day, if not for ourselves, for our children or our children's children. And so there really is not another group of people, to my understanding, in all of world history who have accomplished in such a short period of time so very much, given the sub-level of existence that West Africans experienced when they came to the shores of America. And so I think that as I refer to audacity as positive audacity, not the audacity to insult somebody or to be negative toward a person, because many times if a African-American gentleman did not jump off a sidewalk so that a non-African-American woman could pass by, they were considered audacious. They didn't know their place, second-class citizen. And then, unfortunately, sometimes it also could mean a beating or some other physical assault. I think to gentlemen who served in World War II, like your father, there were a couple of gentlemen in America who came back to small town USA, walking around in their, probably like many other gentlemen, walking around in their military uniform. But for a few African Americans, it did not end well. They were literally hung in their uniforms. That's because they had the audacity to be proud of what they had done to spread democracy for the world, for a country that at that point in time was not very democratic for the average African American.
That's a perfect segue. So as I mentioned, you have all of these wonderful stories of our unsung heroes and we have unsung heroes walking among us every single day. If you only take time, and I'm speaking to our listening audience, to listen or to ask us about our background and experiences, it might amaze you. So one of the individuals that you talked about was Dory Miller. And I'd heard of his story before and just his heroic and bravery deeds on the USS Tennessee. And for those of you who don't know, Dory was in World War II. And back then, blacks were even, because my father joined in the segregated army. He joined in 1948, just missed World War II. But at that time, blacks had certain positions that they could hold. And being in the naval ship, they were not allowed to fire any of the weapons. And long story short, when they were under attack, Dory was the one, when the navalman was shot down, he was the one that took the machine gun, and he shot down however many planes that he did. But more importantly, he risked his life to save his shipmates. And I'm going to turn this over to you because I want you to talk about that Audacity Code and bravery, and how we as a people, even though we've been beaten down, pressed down, repressed, oppressed, when it comes down to heroics, we always look to take care of our fellow man. And this was an example. So do you want to talk about how you've incorporated bravery as part of your Audacity Code?
I think Dory is a still example of what we traditionally think of as bravery, the military hero, the unassuming personality that finds everything within inside of themselves and saves the day for either their family, their community, or coworkers. But I think that as African Americans, when you get up every day and do the best that you can, you're showing a level of bravery. My grandmother used to say something to the effect that when America gets a cold, Black people get the flu, which means that we always have it a little worse than the person who is not African American. And so when you have to get up and live today on what is considered minimum wage, which when I was a kid coming up, that was a wage that was for teenagers learning just basic work habits by having a job after school for a couple of hours. But now people are having to live and support families on that. That's bravery. That you continue to hope for a better day, even though that better day may not materially exist for you, but hopefully it will exist for your children or your grandchildren. That's bravery. Because a lot of people, I laugh at sometime at the reality TV shows that come on, the things that can just crash other members of our society who are not African American, just hilarious to me, because just because you can't find your favorite pump or the color you want or something didn't arrive the day that you wanted to have it and you're going to have a complete meltdown, that is probably 2 seconds in the life of the average African American on any given day. There are certain things that just aren't going to go your way because that's how life is. But there are many things that as African American, you have to champion yourself against merely because you have the badge of a brown skin color. And so bravery is those magnificent military feats of outstanding selflessness, but it's also the man at the corner store who makes minimum wage currently in the COVID environment that we live, who no longer gets hazard pay. If he did get hazard pay to begin with, that's equally as brave as Dory, just in a different circumstance.
I love that analogy, and you're right. We tend to look at bravery as those that are on, the front line from our military, our firefighters, our police officers. But yeah, those that are, exposed to COVID, our frontline workers, our grocery store workers, every day doing that service with little gratitude, with little financial reward, so that we can come home and feed our families, so that we can have our sanitized wipes and whatever else that we need. And we tend not to give consideration or thought to the fact that every day they're putting their lives in harm's way. So thank you so much for that simple yet very real example that I think can resonate with all of us. Barbara, is there something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, thanks, LaWanna. Yes, I do want to add something. I wanted to ask you, Queen, about Elizabeth's mom, Bette Freeman, and how she fought for freedom. That was very powerful.
Yes, I think it depends on what day or maybe what part of the day, which is my favorite character from the book. But I think Elizabeth Munberg Freeman said it very clearly in the quote that I end the chapter with, that she would have exchanged her life to have 1 minute of freedom on earth if it was offered to her. Now, it wasn't offered to her. She had to fight for it. To make the story very short as possible, Munberg was a slave in the late 1700s, early 1900s, who worked for a judge and his family in the state of Massachusetts. At this time, of her being associated with these gentlemen, they were discussing their unhappiness with being British subjects in America. And they would have all kinds of discussions where she basically had to take care of their needs, feed them, fill the glass of water, bring in the firewood, whatever was needed, while they had these long discussions of how unhappy they were and what they should do about their unhappiness. And a great deal of it centered on their sense of personhood, that they had the right for liberty, freedom, justice, a sense of self-direction. And so she realized that she was just equally as human as these gentlemen were, but she was not free. Her husband, she hadn't married, she had a daughter, but her husband had lost his life in the American, what we now call the American Revolution, leading up to the American Revolution. And so she audaciously sought out the help of one of the gentlemen who would constantly be at the home where she worked to take her boss, his peer, another legal professional, to court to sue for her freedom. And she based her argument on what is now the Massachusetts Constitution. And so the audacity for her to leave her place of employment, to go to someone who at one point had a checkered record as related to the enslavement of other people, to ask for help, for this person to accept the case, develop the case, bring the case, and ultimately win the case based on her very simple assessment of her personhood. I am just as much as human as you gentlemen are, and I would like my freedom just like you like your freedom from England. And fortunately, she did win her freedom, but she won more than just her freedom. Her case set the legal precedents to basically abolish slavery in the state of Massachusetts. And it would have been wonderful if it would have been a case that could have abolished slavery in America. But at least there was one state that if you could get to it, you had the opportunity to live free on this side of your life experience. And fortunately, she had more than just 1 minute of freedom. She had about 30 years of freedom. Her daughter had children. She was able to earn a living for the work that she had given so freely, or was forced to give so freely to others. She built a home, she bought land. And it just shows you that sometimes the audacity of your own sense of self, of trying to achieve what you need to achieve, you not only affect your outcomes, but those for so many people that you know and even don't know.
I love her story. I think hers was, as one of our viewers said, she was one of her absolute favorite person spotlighted in the book. And for me as well. And for me, it was because, I mean, just imagine, what was going on in her psyche to say, here I am, I'm an enslaved person, and I'm going to challenge the systems that be, the power that be. I'm going to go against all odds. There's no precedent set for what I'm about to do. I'm going to go into the system, get someone who knows the system to plead my case. And I'm going to believe, I'm going to have that confidence, that determination that I'm going to win. And so to our listening audience, I challenge you. This book, again, it's a tapestry of beautifully written stories of American history. But within each, there is the Audacity Code. There's 12 components of the code. And I challenge you to ask yourself, what are you willing to go all in for? What systems are you willing to challenge? What limiting beliefs are you ready to tear down to win your freedom to live the divine beauty genius that was intended just for you? Are you just content to just be among the status quo, just keep doing what you're doing, and just hoping against hope that things will change. The choice is yours. And that's this call to action here with this Audacity Code. So again, I'm speaking to now our non-Black listeners. Please don't look at this book and think, it's a Black book. There is codes of truth here, life application, that if you apply them, if you take and tease out and hear the wisdom, hear the hidden secrets here, I guarantee you are going to take your life to the next level if you dare to be audacious. Barbara.
Ooh, that just gave me goosebumps. I'm like, I'm ready to take on the world again. Get the book. Okay. Well, I wanted to say, Queen, I want to ask you, because, we have the Rachel Ray cooking shows and those, network cooking shows. But before all that, we kind of started that revolution. I want to ask a little bit of what you, on that note about, like the cooking of how we do in our generation.
Well, I know that there are lots of cooking shows, and even a few of them I look at myself in the evening. But when television first started, literally in the early 1950s, in New Orleans, which is famous for its Creole, Cajun, mix of a little bit of this, a little bit of that cooking, there was a Black woman who had a cooking show. But not only did she have a cooking show, she had a phenomenal career that was focused not just on making delectable, tasty dishes, but on trying to uplift her community through the art of cooking. Through her lifetime, she had a cooking school for Blacks to learn how to become chefs or other ancillary career areas in the food service and hospitality business. She had a luncheonette, because it was segregated at that time for Black workers, so they could come and get a nutritious, healthy, but quick meal, and also circulate money back through the Black community. She was such a fine cook and had such a reputation that she left New Orleans on several times to go work at places like Colonial Williamsburg for the Rockefellers and in upstate New York. She had a frozen food line, but unfortunately, like so many of us, she had a hidden health issue that ended her life in her early 50s. But her legacy still lives on. If this is a woman who had just through the simple fact of having a love for cooking and using cooking as a vehicle to move not only herself and her family forward financially, but her community financially, I think that many of us can take that same audacity to take what is our natural gift to not only move ourselves forward in our immediate circle, but also our community at large.
I love that story. I know I read it. I thought, what?
Right.
Someone who was before Julia Childs?
Correct.
That was amazing. Now, we are almost out of time, and we're definitely going to have you come back, because I would love to do a series with you where you get into the elements of the code, but I just want to read them off to our listening audience. And we're here with Juanita B. Johnson, who is the best-selling author of the Audacity Code, Coloring Black Outside the Lines, which is available on her website, which we will show you. Is that you can get a copy of that. And we encourage you, please get a copy, because it's going to make a difference in your life. So you talk about free, desire, commitment, integrity, vision, accountability, adaptability, Ujima, which is a Kwanzaa term meaning collective work and responsibility, service to others, bravery, preparedness, and confidence. And before we close, I want you to end this with the word vision. And what is it that you see for yourself in this work with the Audacity Code? What is the vision that you have? And secondly, what is the vision that you hope people who are listening or who have the opportunity to read your book will have for their lives moving forward?
The vision that I have is that I can share just a little bit of what I received as a child growing up as a member of my household. When it was dinner time, we would watch the CBS News, but then as we were doing the dishes, my parents would just tell me stories of local, regional, and sometimes internationally known Blacks who would just know things. So as a child, I listened, but then, of course, they're going to repeat the story as time goes on. And then when I started validating by my own independent research that what they was telling me was correct, it just made me feel such a sense of pride and resolve. And it also gave me, I didn't realize it, this fearlessness to believe that I could be and do anything in this world that I chose to do. I fought for a long time aligning myself with the word educator. I'm not an educator in the sense of in a classroom, but I do like to teach people or to challenge people's perceptions, the limited perceptions of African Americans here in the United States. My vision as it relates to readers is that you will find a story or stories that will give you a little pick-me-up to re-energize you, to reboost your desire to achieve that which you hear in your heart, know in your mind, and it may have put your hand to the plow in the past but gave up for some reason. It is for you to continue forward, not to give up, and to know that others who had circumstances much more dire than we will ever face as African Americans or either as European Americans at this time, who did phenomenal things with all types of limitations, but that inner spark within them had to be acknowledged, had to be expressed. And so I'm hoping that the confidence that I grew up with, it taken for granted that I could do, influence whatever I chose, that you too will feel that same sense of optimism and hope and have the audacity to live your life by coloring outside the lines in Black.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We salute you. Thank you so very much, Juanita. We truly honor you and all that you do. Thank you for being a living history for us, a legacy for our youth that are going to be able to look at the richness and have pride in our history. And to those who are our non-African American brothers and sisters, that you see that Black history is in fact American history. So take up that charge that Juanita said. And this is about living your best life, but doing so audaciously, unapologetically, being the divine genius that is you. You can reach Juanita and order her book, a copy of her book, The Audacity Code, Coloring Black Outside the Lines, at www.juanitabjohnson.com. Juanita, thank you so very much again. We need to have you back so we can dig a little deeper.
Well, thank you so very much for this generous invitation. I hope that everybody has a great evening, a better tomorrow, and just commit to yourself to live audaciously as you can.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you again.